All right. Thank you for joining us today on our first annual Food Junkie Summit. Our guest today is Sarah Kleiner, and you guys probably know her as the Carnivore Yogi. And I'm just going to stop talking and let Sarah go ahead and introduce herself because I think she can probably do a much better job than I can. So, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's always fun to chat with the two of you. We've done your podcast, my podcast, and it's just really, I love being in this space and talking about food addiction, just talking about addiction, period, and continuing the conversation. So thank you for having me. I guess just a little bit about me, how I got into this space was, I have had a lifelong love affair addiction with food. And, from a very young age was taught that food was to help soothe you. I used it as an emotional tool from a very young age. And, grew up, got older, found alcohol and drugs, and those did not make me gain weight. I think I was like 235 pounds when I was 14. I remember being in like the ninth grade and being like, I'm different than everyone else, and still continuing to use the food. And as I got into high school, I started doing more compulsive dieting and found, that I could diet more if I drank alcohol or used different drugs, that I could stay at a normal weight. And so I just jumped from food to another thing and lived somewhat of a functional life, I guess you could say. How many of us do with dealing with these kind of burdening addictions? It's kind of like this eternal sadness, this cloud that is perpetually over your head of like, I'm doing the deal, I'm working, I'm in life, and but I still am so controlled by my addiction. I had my daughter when I was around 29, I think, and I got up to, again, 235 pounds. I've lost 100 pounds 3 times. I think I mentioned that. So after I had my daughter, um, I was like, I'm determined to never gain this weight back again. And I haven't, thank goodness. But that's when I really had to start doing the work, was when I decided I was never going to gain that weight back again. And I became a yoga teacher. My daughter was diagnosed as autistic, and it was really a shock for me and threw me deeper into addiction. And at that point, I had lost all the weight. I was very thin and I was determined not to gain it back. And so I started really abusing alcohol to the point where I had to basically go to Alcoholics Anonymous because I was going to lose my everything, my marriage, my child, everything was going to be lost. And so I bounced in and out of AA for years, trying to be a yoga teacher and trying to be spiritual and let that be my recovery, because I was like, I'm too young. I don't need this. And then eventually, 5 years ago, I decided I would do it and really do it, and just I gained 30 pounds immediately when I got into recovery this last time 5 years ago. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, why am I gaining all this weight? And I feel like I'm still in active addiction with food. And when I brought it to my sponsor, God love her, she's still my sponsor. She doesn't understand my food stuff. That's okay. I found other resources, and I haven't taken a drink of alcohol. I haven't needed to. But, she's like, you're not going to die from overeating. You're not going to get pulled over for eating ice cream and da 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 da. So I just really struggled in early sobriety. Not only I was getting sober from alcohol and trying to just really do that. And then the food stuff came. So I discovered the carnivore diet. And I was like, I had been vegan in the past because I was a yoga teacher. I felt like that was what I had to do. And that was a disaster for me personally. My health got really bad and it was not sustainable for me. I did it for over 2 years and it just didn't work. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try this, because I was having a lot of autoimmune issues as well, a lot of eczema, a lot of joint pain, to the point where I couldn't practice yoga anymore. So I did the carnivore diet, and I noticed that my food addiction issues, the binging stopped and the sugar cravings stopped. And it was like this whole new sense of freedom I had never had before. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So then I kind of stumbled into meeting a lot of people who were saying they were food sober. Because there's pressure to say, oh, you should be able to eat some sugar, or you could go back to it, or have a dessert or a cake at this event or that event, you know? And I just was like, but I feel so good. Do I really have to? And so I found people like you guys, Dr. Vera Tarman, and, just some cool people in the community that were talking about food sobriety. And so I have been this year reintroducing some foods. None of it has been cake, but I've tried some different vegetables and things like that and been fine, been great, have had no issues with joint pain, eczema, any of that stuff really. And so it's just, I feel like it's a lifestyle at this point. And I do see now how food really took as much of my life as the alcohol and the drugs did, and took up as much mental space. And I'm just grateful to be a part of in recovery, from alcohol and from food. So that's, I know it's super long-winded, but that's kind of my my intro.
No, that's great. Can you tell us a little bit about like what life is like today for you in recovery? And also, like, how has being gotten off the sugar, being food sober, how has that amplified your recovery from alcohol and drugs as well? Because that's my story as well. And I know when I got food sober, the cravings or the obsessions or the thoughts or the triggers for alcohol, they just became non-existent. So I wonder if that was a potential, part of your story.
Yeah, well, I still go to meetings very regularly. I went to one today, so I still go to meetings. I need my crew. I need to have supportive people around me, because I see my addiction just as my addiction now, not necessarily as food or alcohol. It's just like addiction is this thing that distorts my thinking, my brain, and makes me the victim of every situation and makes everybody else resentment worthy. On a chemical level, I definitely feel that not eating sugar has enhanced my life immensely. I wake up with natural energy. Um, I quit coffee this year in February, which is something I never thought I would do ever. Like, insane, crazy, I know. But I've been able to quit coffee, and I just have a lot of natural energy. I have been on antidepressants, SSRIs, and I struggled in early sobriety this time, 5 years ago, with, do I go back on the meds? I need the meds. Like, I need psychiatric meds. Da, 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 da. I'm depressed. When I'm off the sugar, I don't feel like I need any drugs. And this is, I'm not speaking out. If anyone needs psychiatric drugs, please take them. Please work with your doctor. But for me, a lifelong of needing antidepressants and things to help me sleep and things to benzos and those things, which are a whole other topic, but I didn't need them. And so I think that, and that came with the food sobriety. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are very important things to keep to consider. If we need medications, we need medications. If we need meetings, we need meetings, right? It's about finding all the different puzzle pieces and putting them together to figure out what works for us. Sometimes we have to take things away as time goes on. Sometimes we have to add things in or back. Absolutely. So, I mean, I guess that kind of leads me into, will you kind of describe for our audience, what how hard the beginning can feel when we get into recovery, and how you dug deep and stuck with it, right? Because like it can often feel like failure, like when we're in the middle. So can you kind of talk about like the difficulties in the beginning? It's obviously different now, and like how you keep yourself motivated to stay in it.
Yeah, when I first got sober from alcohol this last time, I experienced a great amount of depression. And that's where the food came in. Because it's now I know what I know about addiction is like my dopamine was totally screwed up. I mean, just super screwed up. And so I felt very depressed, very low, but I just forced myself to go to meetings every day. So I committed to do 90 meetings in 90 days. And I just did it. I had never been willing. I've been in recovery in and out of the rooms for 11 years. Like I went to my first AA meeting 11 years ago and, never really was able to put together any significant amount of time. But, I just made myself go, and being around people and having the support, being able to talk to people every day got me through that first like really low messed up dopamine part. Cause I think it just takes a while for your brain to repair. And then with food this last time, I had started meditating like 6 months before, and I'm a big proponent of meditation. I love meditation. And I really am convinced that if I did not have that daily meditation program that I do every day, twice a day, I don't know that it would have been as easy for me to get rid of the sugar and just drop the food addiction. And I'm still going to meetings, so with the food, it's like I have the support of the meetings, and I just kind of flipped it in my brain and said, I'm going to be looking at the sugar, all those foods, the processed foods, the same way that I look at alcohol. And I don't have to tell anybody in this meeting about that, but I'm going to start using my program for the food as well. And I have my daily meditation also that really does help with the brain. But I did feel depressed when I went off the sugar processed foods. I felt like kind of lost. And the other thing I did was I built like my social media platform. It was supposed to it was a joke, the Carnivore Yogi page on Instagram was like totally a joke. And it was just my attempt at like, let me follow every single carnivore person I could find, keto person I could find, as long as the keto person's not doing like freaking food porn all the time with desserts. Those people had to go real fast. But, that's how I did it. It was meetings, meditation, and then the just kind of surrounding myself on what I see on my phone. Oh, they're eating steak. I'm eating steak, those kind of mirror neurons. So that's what I did with both situations.
Can you talk a little bit about what your body image recovery has been like through this? Because it sounds like, we were trying, and I think for all of us, this is our story. We're always trying to find that diet, that magic pill, whatever that is, all to be the weight, because when we get that weight, we're going to be super happy. And, you do the yoga, you do the meditation, but what are some of the things you do to work on your body image, and how's your relationship with your body now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still working on that one big time. It's a work in progress. And I kind of went to carnivore also hoping to lose a lot of weight, and I ended up gaining weight. Well, I lost a little weight initially, but then I ended up gaining a little bit more weight. And so I have had to do some tinkering and some like, all right, looking at volume eating and looking at those different types of things. And then learning to, now I have a different relationship with my body. Like I want to be healthy. I want to feel good. When I got blood work done in June, and my doctor, I'm 42, I turned 42 in June. She was like, your hormones are like as good as someone I see in their mid 30s. What have you been doing? She's like, these numbers are ridiculous. What have you been doing? Like, and I was like, if I told you, you probably would freak out. So I look at things now as like healthy, like daily, like every morning I'm up and I'm trying to look at the sunrise, try to walk a little bit if I can, just get out, breathe. I'm looking at my body as longevity and mitochondrial health. And I'm not the weight that I want to be, honestly. I would still love to have a lower body weight, but I'm so happy with my blood markers, with the fact that I'm not walking around craving sugar all the time, that, if I don't have the body that I did when I was like a vegan yogi, which I was way too freaking skinny anyway. Everyone kept telling me I look sick, but I'm still working on that. Like in my head, I don't need to look like that. I don't need to be that weight. I'm healthy. And I feel good. So it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, I think for so many of us in this professionally and personally, right, in this field, it's like when we think about alcohol or pills or whatever it might be, like nobody's showing up in your space saying, oh, you still have weight to lose, or oh, whatever, right? Like typically we're not really doing that to each other. And it seems like that has been happening, and it probably has always happened, but I feel like I'm hearing reports of it more so now in the food addiction world, where people are getting food sober and they're sane, right? They're actually like not volume eating, and they're not like going to the food because of an emotional trigger, whatever, or binging because it was sugar or flour or grains or whatever that substance is for them. And then they're having people make comments about their body size, and it just is this whole new tailspin between the scale and clothing, and that David Wiss has called it the relentless pursuit of thinness. And really, like, just hearing what you had to say about being healthy and looking at other things like blood markers and getting outside to walk or be in the sunshine or be able to move your body in a way that you want to be able to move it. And is there can it be about joy and happiness that way, or does it have to look a very specific way in order to be satisfied? So thank you so much to speaking to that. I think it's so important and not talked about enough in this space.
Yeah, and I do sometimes feel like I don't put a lot of pictures of my self in my underwear on my Instagram, just because I don't feel like that's necessarily serving my platform very well. That's not what my platform and my message is about, is like look good in your underwear. Other people do that. That's cool. You can follow them, but that's not the message I'm trying to put across to people at all.
No, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about your platform. I made a post not that long ago about how recovery is not about a before and after picture. And it really triggered some people. Surprisingly to me, some people that came out of the woodworks that I had no idea that it would be such a big hot button issue for them. It really was. And it just reminded me that there's, we're all human and there's still a lot of healing to do. And so I agree. I mean, you're one of the platforms that I do send people to, that I'm like, because I know you're not out there doing, like you said, like food porn or like before and after pictures, and it's all about this, that, or the other thing. You really spread a message of recovery. So that brings me to wanting to know, what is something that you believed early on in your recovery that maybe has changed now with time? Like, what was something that maybe you were doing early on that, yeah, you're like kind of like now looking back going, oh, if only you knew, Sarah?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess I had this kind of Pollyanna idea of like, if I just get rid of my addictions, everything in my life is going to be really easy. I think a lot of people get into that because the addiction really has taken over so much of their life, and there's so much joy that they have lost, and there's so many things that they are missing out on because of their addiction. So I kind of had this naive view of like, everything's going to be perfect, and the weight's going to fall off, and I'm going to be able to wear whatever I want, and this, that, and the other, and have like the perfect body and all of that. And now it's like, no, I'm healthy, and if I could just go back to that person who was just entering recovery and be like, you are going to be healthy. You're going to feel good. You're not going to have trouble sleeping. You're not going to have this crippling depression all the time. So that's something you can look forward to, but let go of this, like, perfect body thing, whatever. It doesn't freaking matter. It's all about your health and feeling better mentally. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you've talked about a few things that you do daily for your food addiction recovery: the meditation, the yoga, the carnivore meal plan. Is there anything else that you do? And like every single day, you make sure you do, because that helps keep you, and go to meetings, you said. And also, like, do you feel like you have a secret to success?
That's funny. It's just a lot. I've just built on things. I have so many routines now. It kind of drives my husband a little bit crazy. He's just like, this morning, he was like, well, you're committed. Because, I come in from my sunrise time and I'm like, I'm going to go. I bought a red light panel. So I've been doing like the red light therapy, and I like to sit in front of my red light for, 10 minutes or so after I come in from sunrise. So I get up, I meditate first, then I go out, have sunrise time, then I have my red light. I might eat breakfast some days. I don't always eat breakfast, but Today was a breakfast day. Yeah, go to meetings. Exercise is important to me. Getting in a really good sweat, at least 6 days a week. I don't like to have more than one day off. So some people might have something to say about that, but a sweat can be like walking outside. That's what I did just before I jumped on with you guys, is just walking outside. Sweating is so important. Having contact with other sober people, because I can get to feel very isolated and very alone, even on my social media feed. Like nobody understands really like anything. And so I try to have contact with a sober person. Maybe it's a meeting, maybe it's a text message, maybe it's a phone call. Um, and I don't, with the meal plan, I'm not super strict carnivore so much anymore. I'll eat, a little veg here and there. If I want to eat a salad, I will, but I just don't eat processed food, don't eat sugar. I do a little bit of sun exposure every day. So I've been really working hard on getting my vitamin D up, which has made a huge difference in my mood this year. So I've really been working hard on increasing my vitamin D this year and not taking supplements to do it, really just getting out in the sun and getting sun exposure. And then bedtime, evening hygiene is huge, 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 huge. Like my husband knows, my daughter knows, mom is done at 9 o'clock. Mom is like in the bedroom doing her nighttime routine. I have an acupressure mat that I'll lay on and listen to a guided meditation, and just relax and settle myself down. I have blackout curtains and keep the room cold. And so yeah, some people would say I'm a little crazy, but all of these things have kind of come in over the last 5 years. It's not like I woke up one day and started doing all this light protocols and bedtime routines and sleep hygiene, and that didn't happen all in one day. It was just like, oh, and like I said, I quit coffee in February. I never would have thought I would have done that, but one day I just woke up and said, I think I don't need this anymore. I'm starting to feel like it's making me a little anxious and wired, and I wonder how I would do without it. So I have a lot of self-care routines that I implement on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think you made a really important point. So it's not like you quit food and alcohol, or processed foods, alcohol, pills, like all the things on the same day, just like you didn't add or stack these healthy lifestyle habits in one day either. This has been a process over time, and it's been in pursuit of some health and wellness goals as well. It sounds like that some of these things have come into play, but that it all contributes to your recovery. So thinking about that, like, what do you think in across time, from like the time that you think your story, like with the food or the addiction in general, started to where you are today? Like, I hear your story and I hear nothing but success, like, in quotations, success, in that you didn't give up. You've never quit on yourself. There may have been moments or times where it looked like that or felt like it, but ultimately here you are today, and you're still like, okay, I'm getting my vitamin D up. Okay, I'm focusing on sleep, and the next thing might be something else, whatever that might be. And I'm just wondering, like, what do you think has been your greatest achievement, or what do you attribute those achievements to? Like, what's like the underlying thing that helped you get there?
As far as like what routine do you think helped me get success, and what was the biggest success?
Whether it be routine or a person or people, or yeah, I'm not really sure, like what's been kind of like that factor that's shown up for you, or you've created, that has helped you get to where you are.
I think it just comes down to consistency and just not giving up and just showing up. That's what we just say in recovery, is you just show up. You watch somebody's feet, like how sober are their feet? Are my feet walking to meetings? Are my feet outside, getting exercise? Or is my feet walking to the refrigerator? Are my feet going to the ice cream store? Like, what are my feet doing? What are the actions that I'm doing that help me stay sober? And so it's just like, I feel like a bunch of things that have, just built up over time, and it's just a matter of showing up. And if I have screwed up, like, with I haven't messed up with alcohol. I almost have 5 years, but I remember when I first started carnivore, when I would get PMS, that is when I would feel very vulnerable, and I would end up eating like my husband's Lara bars, or going back to like nuts or something. And I wouldn't go and eat like a bunch of ice cream or anything, but I learned that during like PMS time, I needed to eat more food. I needed to understand how my body worked. So I've really learning and understanding how the chemistry of my body works, and then having compassion for myself helps me a little bit more with the food stuff. And if you do screw up and have, the Lara bars or nuts or whatever, the next day you just start again. You don't let yourself, just on a tangent, in my recovery from alcohol, I did have 4 years sober at one point. And then I decided I didn't need meetings anymore, that I was too good for the meetings. I was too young. I got a resentment against my sponsor at the time and against the group. And instead of just finding another sponsor, another group, I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is stupid. I'm a yoga teacher. I can just use yoga and meditation to keep myself sober. And I didn't have any support. And so I think just that support piece and having people in your life is super important. And so what ended up happening was I had a bad day, which turned into a bad week, which turned a bad month, which turned into a bad few months. And then all of a sudden I was in crippling depression again. And then it was like, oh, a drink would be really a good idea. And a drink one night turned into a year of drinking for me, a year. And that first night after I drank, and I know this would be the same with me for food as well. So you can insert food in this story if you want. An ice cream sundae, wine, would be the same thing for me at this point. I'm very sure of that. But I had the wine the one night, and then I was like, the next morning, woke up like, oh God, I got to get back to recovery. I can't do this again. This is bad. I feel terrible. What have I done? What did I do? I didn't go back. I didn't get help. And I was just stuck in an addiction cycle for a full 365 days, which miserable. And so, if you're struggling, just just get help, talk to someone. I knew the second I walked into a meeting again, even though it was like terrifying for me after that year of drinking, I was like, everyone's going to remember me. I had 4 years sober. Everyone's going to look at her. Oh yeah, shouldn't look how great her life is. I was like, I had all these voices of like keeping me from going. But when I finally went in, it was like, oh God, I don't have to fight this anymore. And I have people here who want to help me. And yeah, so I know that was like a really long answer, but if you just get help, just talk about it, tell on your disease. That's the biggest piece of advice that I have.
Yeah, I think that's so important because, there is so much information out there about what to do, but it's taking the steps to do the things. It's the action that actually makes recovery happen. And you certainly do a ton. You live a very recovery focused life these days. So I'm wondering, is there anything in your life, whether it's like recovery based or life based, that you struggle with still to this day? And I know you had mentioned body image, but is there anything else that you struggle with, and how do you manage that?
I definitely still struggle with the body image thing. I'm also a parent to a child with special needs. And this weekend was just like super stressful. Like sometimes it's not that hard, but sometimes it's hard. Like she just did a bunch of crap this weekend. It was also a full moon. Like I was about to go to bed last night and found out that my chest freezer with like $1,000 of meat, she had unplugged it and there was like blood all over the basement floor. So just stuff like that happens. And I struggle to, in those times, not want to turn to addictive substances, not want to turn, I'm thinking, oh, she's got some, medication that could help me feel better in there that the doctor gave me for emergency purposes only. That came into my mind. And I was like, hell no, we're not doing that. So I have to continue to just tell on my disease because my disease is always trying to find a little way in. But I struggle with a pretty stressful life offline. I don't really post about it or talk about it so much anymore. So that's a struggle for me. And that's probably why I have so many routines and so much support around me. And then definitely struggling with the body image thing of like having this big platform on Instagram and YouTube, my podcasts, and trying to keep all those things going. And then feeling like maybe somebody is going to be like, oh, well, where's your bikini pictures and how much do you weigh? And, and like things like that. It definitely comes in my mind. I'm like, I'm just a freaking human being and doing the best that I can. And I am healthy, but yeah, those are the things that I struggle with probably the most.
How human of you, Sarah. Just how human of you. And it's, as you're saying that, I mean, I'm a mother myself. I mean, I won't even pretend to know what it's like to parent with special needs, but I do have two daughters. And so it's like that balance, right? It's like the constant balance of clients, online presence, uh, other side projects that you have going on, parenting, I have a husband, right? Like all those different things and taking care of yourself. And I think, I just, yeah, how human are you to just have the struggles of a normal everyday person and not want to necessarily share all of that, obviously, because it's none of our business ultimately, right? Anybody else's business. And if somebody were to show up and say, like, where's that bikini pic? Because I've thought about that too, like, especially after that post with the before and after thing in recovery and just thinking like, all the judgments that must be out there. And then I just have to remind myself, none of my business. If they're right, like maybe not for me, those clients aren't for me, or those people aren't for me. Right. And we just keep moving. And I think, I just thank you for calling that out and just, pointing out like we're all just regular people. We're just trying to help others in the best way that we know how, or with our own message. So this is where I know we know that you coach too, and not necessarily specifically around food addiction. Sometimes it's around specifically to carnivore. I know that you've done meditation and yoga groups, that kind of thing, but I imagine you have clients that show up in that space where you suspect, or maybe they've even acknowledged, having heard your story, that there's food addiction there. And I'm wondering like what behaviors and factors, or yeah, just what things do you see that contribute to them getting better when you're working with them, or even if you're not working with them anymore and they're still just giving you updates, like what do you see is helpful to them to getting, in quotes, better?
The saying that I always come back to is the same person will drink again, or the same person will eat again, eat the foods again. And I mean, we all got to eat, but you know what I mean by that. And so you really do have to, I feel, change your life. You have to change your routines. You have to change how you live from sun up to sundown. It has to change. You can't just, decide you're going to change your eating and then just focus on that and not look at the other 24 hours of your day, because the other 24 hours of your day are definitely going to feed into how you eat and how you live your life. And so one of the biggest things I have with people want to come to me and get a food plan and get macros and get this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, you know what? We have to look further. We have to look at more than just the food. We have to look at your whole daily routines. So yeah.
All right. So speaking of that, then, what does your coaching look like? How do you work with clients? What are some of the things you offer in case anyone who's listening today might want to reach out and work with you?
Yeah, I do one-on-one consultation. So usually I'll have people do a consultation with me. And then if they want to get some one-on-one coaching after the consultation, I'll take the consultation fee and like wrap it into a coaching package so they don't have to pay double. And then if they do a coaching package with me, it's, once weekly we meet on Zoom and then unlimited email in between. And typically we'll go through what they're really struggling with. I want to know about them. I want to know their whole daily routine from sun up to sundown. I want to know what they're struggling with food. I want to know if there's other things going on. I'll have people that tell me that they're drinking every day. And I'm like, I can't work with you if that's what you're going to be doing. I can't work with you. So I really try to look at them as a whole person and then help them in the coaching, again, to set up daily routines for success. If they want to email me every night and report their food, if that makes them feel better, cool. They have unlimited email access to me. So I really just try to work with each person as an individual. If there's education that needs to take place about hormones and cortisol and how we reduce those things, I'll work with them in that way as well. But yeah, it's super, super individual.
That's great to know. And because I had often wondered that myself, in that I get your newsletter. And so sometimes it's like specific things, I think, right? And maybe that's more group coaching. So is there group coaching?
Yeah, I run groups. I have a membership group that always runs, and that one's like $20 a month. And there's a ridiculous amount of resources in that group of just, I compile, I'm always adding things to it. I do a live stream in there every single Friday. They get to come to my yoga class every Saturday on Zoom. So that is always running, and I have a really awesome group in there. And then I'll occasionally do a coaching group, which I'm doing a 5-week one right now. And it's basically me every morning, a little motivational video. They can ask questions. We have a Zoom meeting every Sunday night, and they get to come to yoga class every Saturday. And yeah, and I'm trying to basically teach them about stress, trauma, how it affects the body. And then we also go into nutrition and hormones and gut health. And so I try to give them a really well-rounded approach and education in that 5 weeks. So yeah, I do those as well.
Really sounds like you hit on the biopsychosocial spiritual aspect of this disease. And and I'm also kind of thinking it doesn't really matter if it's food or alcohol, whatever you're going to be in recovery from. It sounds like these groups and or coaching, individual coaching really will hit all the right notes, I think is what I'm trying to say there. So we've had you on the podcast before, obviously, and so you've already answered our signature question. So my question then for you, Sarah, is what is something that you needed to hear when you first started this journey?
That is a really good question. I think the thing that helped me the most really was just do the next right thing that's right in front of you. Just put one foot in front of the other. Stop forecasting. Stop looking back. Stop forecasting. Just do this next right thing. If the next right thing for you is to like go in the kitchen and defrost some meat for dinner, just go do that. And then maybe the right thing is like go pick your kid up from school. You do that. Like you just kind of take things in increments. And we always say like just one day at a time. Sometimes it's 1 hour, 1 minute, but I just like to think, okay, well, what do I have to do next? What's the next right thing? And so I think that was told to me in early recovery. And I think that's been one of the most impactful things and one of the things I still really do use on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's great. I remember hearing that or hearing it and using it early on for myself as well. And then Frozen 2 came out and there's a whole song about it now. So if anybody needs some inspiration, you can find that on YouTube, I'm sure. Clarissa, do you have any closing questions or thoughts?
No, I just wanted to thank Sarah so much for being here. And I hope everyone checks her out on Instagram. And we're going to link all of the ways that people can find you in like the show notes or attached with this post. So thank you so much for being here today, Sarah.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.